If someone asked me when my life began falling apart, I would probably say it wasn't a single moment. It wasn't the day my husband left me. It wasn't the night I found out he was cheating. It wasn't even the day his parents turned me into their unpaid servant. It was the slow, steady erosion of myself, piece by piece, day by day, until one morning I woke up and didn't recognize who I had become. I was 27 years old when everything collapsed, just when I thought the worst was already behind me. And then came the night when a stranger, a powerful man I had never met, walked into that house, looked at me like he had seen a ghost, and told me something that changed everything I thought I knew about myself. This is how it happened. I still remember the exact smell in the air the night my husband Daniel told me he was leaving. It was raining outside, that familiar dampness seeping into the apartment, mixing with the steam from the pasta boiling on the stove. I had been humming to myself, stirring the sauce, feeling, dare I say it, almost peaceful. We hadn't been fighting, nothing seemed off. And then our front door opened. Daniel walked in, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched. His eyes didn't soften when they landed on me. "Dinner's almost ready," I said, forcing a smile. He didn't even look at the stove. "Ava, we need to talk." My heart sank. Every "we need to talk" in the history of relationships has never been followed by anything good. But still, I tried to brace myself like a normal conversation was coming. "Okay," I whispered. "What's going on?" He didn't sit down. He didn't take off his jacket. He just stood there and said the sentence that ripped my world apart. "I'm leaving you." The boiling from the pot behind me suddenly felt deafening. I stared at him, confused. What do you mean?" I asked, my voice breaking before I could stop it. He sighed with the exhaustion of someone who'd already rehearsed this in his head. "I've met someone else. And I'm moving in with her." He could have stabbed me in the chest and it would have hurt less. My throat tightened as the room began spinning. Someone else? When? How long? But the real question that settled in my mind was, why wasn't I enough? Before I could speak, he added coldly, efficiently, "I've been unhappy for a long time, and she makes me feel alive, so I'm going to be with her." Alive? Was I a corpse to him? What were our 5 years of marriage? A dress rehearsal? I couldn't breathe, my legs barely held me up. "Daniel, please, can we talk about this? We can go to counseling, No," he said sharply. "I'm done pretending. And you should be too." That was the moment I knew the marriage was truly over. Not because he said the words, but because he wasn't sad, not even a little. He had moved on. His eyes had already forgotten what it felt like to love me. Daniel packed his things that same night. Not tomorrow, not after we talked, not after giving me time to process the fact that my life was unraveling. He grabbed his suitcase, shoved clothes inside, zipped it up, and walked out the door without even eating the dinner I'd made. And just like that, I was alone. It wasn't the kind of loneliness you feel when you're physically by yourself. It was the kind that wraps itself around your throat and whispers, "You're not wanted anymore." I sat on the kitchen floor for what felt like hours, hugging my knees, listening to the pasta boil over and burn, until the entire apartment smelled like smoke. I didn't call anyone. I didn't move. I didn't even cry at first. Because shock doesn't let you cry, it freezes you, and I was frozen solid. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes, a pounding headache, and a voicemail from Daniel's mother. "Ava, sweetheart, we heard what happened. Why don't you come stay with us for a little while? You shouldn't be alone right now." At that moment, it sounded like kindness. I was vulnerable, confused, broke. Daniel paid most of our bills. I needed somewhere to go. So I said yes. When I packed my bag, I actually thought to myself, at least his parents still care about me. If only I knew how wrong I was. When I arrived at my in-laws' house, the Grayson home, it was almost too welcoming. Too warm, too prepared. My mother-in-law, Linda, hugged me tightly. "Oh, honey, what he did was unacceptable. Your family, you can stay as long as you need." My father-in-law, Robert, gave me a sympathetic nod, though something in his expression felt off. Like he was studying me, calculating something. I brushed the feeling away. For the first 2 days, they were kind, almost overly kind. They brought me meals to my room. They told me to just rest. They checked in constantly. But on the 3rd day, everything changed. I came downstairs for breakfast and Linda was standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed. "Oh good, you're up," she said. "The laundry needs folding." I blinked. "Oh, okay. I can help." "Help," she repeated with a laugh. "Ava, you're living here now, everyone does their part." The tone wasn't kind anymore, it was sharp, dismissive. After laundry came sweeping, then dishes, then vacuuming, then kitchen cleanup. By evening, I realized something chilling. I hadn't rested. Not even for a minute. I had worked from sunrise to sundown. That night, Linda knocked on my door. Ava, tomorrow morning I expect the downstairs bathroom done before breakfast. Don't make me remind you. Remind me? As if I'd signed up for a job. Still, I was grateful for a roof over my head, so I told myself it was temporary. It wasn't. Days turned into weeks. Kindness turned into commands. Commands turned into expectations. My life became a loop of chores. Coffee at 6 a.m. for my father-in-law, dusting the living room, making breakfast for everyone, cleaning every room, doing all the laundry. It wasn't helping, it was servitude, and every time I paused, even for a second, I heard the whispers. I knew she wasn't wife material. She's lucky we're taking care of her. She should be grateful. Grateful, that word haunted me. Grateful to do their dirty work. Grateful to live in a house where no one respected me. Grateful even though I had nothing left, not money, not marriage, not stability, but I stayed because leaving meant homelessness. And Daniel. He never checked on me, not once. 3 months into my unwanted servitude, something unusual happened. My father-in-law came home acting nervous. He kept adjusting his tie, checking his watch, going over the silverware like he was preparing for royalty. Around 5 p.m., Linda walked into the kitchen, looked me up and down, and said, "Make yourself presentable. Robert's boss is coming for dinner. Don't embarrass us." I froze with a wooden spoon in my hand. "Me?" She rolled her eyes. "Yes, you'll be serving the food." There it was again, not daughter-in-law, not guest, not family, just servant. Still, I nodded. Because arguing wasn't worth the backlash. I showered, put on a simple dress, tied my hair back, and tried my best to look composed even though I felt hollow inside. By the time the doorbell rang, the house looked perfect. Spotless. Like I hadn't spent all day scrubbing it from top to bottom. Robert rushed to the door and practically bowed when he opened it. And in stepped a tall, silver-haired man wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than everything I owned combined. His presence filled the room, calm, sharp, intimidating in a quiet way. "Mr. Hale," Robert said, his voice tight with nervousness. "Welcome." I walked out of the kitchen holding a tray of appetizers, and the moment Mr. Hale saw me, he stopped mid-step. His eyes widened, his face drained of color. And then he whispered, "No, it can't be." The tray almost slipped out of my hands. Mr. Hale, this powerful, composed man who probably had more employees than I had socks, was staring at me like he'd seen a ghost rise from the dead. I stood frozen in the middle of the living room, my fingers trembling around the tray of bruschetta bites. My father-in-law, confused by his reaction, forced a laugh. "Sir, is everything all right?" But Mr. Hale didn't answer him. He kept staring at me. I lowered my gaze, suddenly scared I had done something wrong. Maybe I wasn't supposed to be in the room yet. Maybe I broke some invisible etiquette rule. Maybe then he spoke, his voice low, stunned, slightly shaky. Where did you find her?" My heart stuttered in my chest. "Find me? What did that mean?" Linda stepped forward quickly, answering for me. "Oh, she's just Ava. Our son's ex-wife. She's staying with us for now." There was something dismissive, almost embarrassed in her tone, but Mr. Hale didn't look away from me. Slowly, he walked closer. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears as he studied me, my face, my eyes, my posture, as if scanning for signs, clues, something familiar. And then he said it. "You look exactly like Caroline, exactly." I almost dropped the tray. "Caroline?" I blinked. I'm sorry, sir, I don't know who." He shook his head, stepping closer still. "No, you wouldn't remember. You were too young, much too young." "Too young, remember what?" I swallowed hard. "Sir, I think you're mistaken. My mother's name was Julia Carter." He stared at me for a long moment, a very long moment. Then he said, "No, that was your adoptive mother." My entire body went cold. Linda let out a confused laugh. "Adoptive? Oh no, you must be misinformed. Ava's from a simple family. Her parents died in a car accident ages ago." "Yes," Mr. Hale interrupted sharply. "A car accident that killed Caroline Turner and Ethan Turner. Their daughter survived. The police report said she went into foster care, and then disappeared." I could hear my own heartbeat pounding inside my skull. Turner, why did that name feel familiar? Why did it echo inside me like a forgotten melody? I felt dizzy, gripping the tray so hard my knuckles turned white. Mr. Hale turned to me gently. What is your full name? Ava Carter, I whispered. And before you were adopted? He asked. I hesitated. I rarely talked about that time in my life. It was filled with blurry memories, pain, and displacement. I don't remember, I admitted quietly. I was very young. Everything before the adoption feels foggy. His expression softened, sad even. That's because trauma does that. Then more quietly, you were Ava Turner. The words hit me like a shockwave. Ava Turner, I repeated, barely breathing. Linda scoffed loudly. This is ridiculous. Our son's ex-wife is not some rich heiress, for heaven's sake. She's… Mr. Hale raised a hand, silencing her instantly. He looked straight into my eyes. Ava, your parents were my business partners. They were wealthy, respected, and beloved. You were their only child. Their entire estate was to go to you. I felt the room tilting, like gravity had temporarily forgotten its job. Wealthy. Respected estate, I shook my head. No, sir, I grew up bouncing between foster homes until the Carters adopted me. I never had anything, no money, no family. Nothing. That's because the trust fund wasn't claimable until you turned 25, he explained calmly. It has been waiting for you, untouched. My knees gave out. The tray clattered to the floor and the room erupted. Linda gasped dramatically. Oh my God, Robert, did you hear that? Robert went pale, ghostly pale, the kind of pale people get when they learn their lottery ticket matched all the numbers, but someone else already cashed it in. Daniel's parents exchanged a look I recognized instantly, greed masked as concern. Linda rushed toward Mr. Hale. Sir, surely you must be mistaken. Ava never mentioned… She didn't know, Mr. Hale cut in. Her childhood records were sealed after the accident, but I was there, I knew her parents well. Robert swallowed hard. So she's wealthy? My stomach churned. That was the first thing he cared about, not the trauma I'd lived through. Not that my parents had died. Not that my entire identity had just been flipped upside down, just the money. A significant inheritance, Mr. Hale replied simply. Linda clasped her hands together dramatically. Well, isn't that nice, she said with a fake smile. We've always treated Ava like family, always cared for her. Cared, I almost laughed, but what came next wiped the thin smile off her face. Mr. Hale's expression shifted into something sharp, piercing. He looked around the living room, his gaze landing on the cleaning supplies I'd left by the stairs, the laundry basket at the corner, the half-folded towels on the table. Ava, he asked quietly, how long have you been living here? A few months, I whispered. And they've made you responsible for all of this? He gestured around at the chores I'd done. Before I could answer, Linda jumped in. Well, we thought it would help distract her from the heartbreak, keeping busy and all. Mr. Hale turned to her sharply. That makes no sense, he said bluntly. She wasn't your employee, she was your daughter-in-law, she was grieving. And you worked her like hired help. Linda opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. We didn't, you did, he snapped. The quiet, composed businessman was gone. In his place stood a man enraged by injustice. Then he turned to me, his voice softening. Did you know about the inheritance? He asked. I shook my head. No, I didn't even know my birth parents were wealthy. He nodded. That's what I feared. The trust was meant to be released on your 25th birthday, but because no guardian stepped forward, the records got buried. I blinked. So I'm… Yes, he said firmly. You are the sole heir to the Turner estate. My breath caught. Before I could speak, Robert stepped forward desperately. Ava, sweetheart, he said, his tone dripping with sudden affection, why didn't you tell us about any of this? We would have helped you, we would have. Mr. Hale cut him off again. Enough, don't insult her intelligence. His voice boomed through the room. You used her grief, you used her vulnerability, and you took advantage of a woman who, frankly, has more dignity than all of you combined. I swallowed hard. No one had defended me like that in years, maybe my whole life. Just when I thought the night couldn't get any more surreal, the front door opened, and in walked Daniel, laughing. With the woman he left me for hanging off his arm like a designer purse. Dad, Mom, we're here, he called out casually. He didn't see me yet, didn't hear the tension in the room, didn't notice the dropped tray on the floor, then he looked up. And saw Mr. Hale, his eyes widened. Sir, what are you doing here? His girlfriend dropped her smile instantly, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Mr. Hale glared at him. I'm here because your parents have some explaining to do. Daniel looked confused. Explain what? Then Mr. Hale pointed at me. This woman your wife, ex-wife, Daniel corrected with a smugness that made my skin crawl. Mr. Hale's jaw flexed. This woman, he repeated with emphasis, is the daughter of Caroline and Ethan Turner. She is the rightful heir to a multi-million-dollar estate, and your family has treated her like a servant. Daniel's mouth fell open. What? His girlfriend's eyes widened with shock and worse, calculated interest. Ava's rich, she blurted out. I didn't answer. Mr. Hale didn't give her the dignity of a look. Daniel stepped closer to me, eyes darting. Is this true? Ava, why didn't you tell me? I finally found my voice. Tell you what, Daniel, that I didn't know who I was, that I spent my whole life thinking I was unwanted. You never cared enough to ask about my past. He flinched. I continued, voice trembling but strong. You left me like I was nothing, because you thought I had nothing. Silence, heavy, intense, uncomfortable for everyone except me. For once, I wasn't the one shrinking. Daniel looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time and realizing he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. But there was no going back, not for him, not for us, not ever. The living room felt like it was holding its breath. Daniel was staring at me as if I had transformed into someone else entirely. His girlfriend shifted uncomfortably, her hand slipping from his arm as if she suddenly wasn't so confident about her place next to him. Linda and Robert stood frozen, looking like they were watching their lives crumble in slow motion. And then there was Mr. Hale, standing tall, steady, a barrier between me and the people who had used me. Daniel swallowed hard. Ava, he said in a softer voice than I'd heard from him in months, why didn't you tell me any of this? Something in me snapped. I let out a small laugh, cold, tired, but finally honest. Tell you, I repeated. Daniel, you barely looked at me for the last year we were married. You didn't ask about my childhood. You didn't ask what I went through. You didn't ask what I wanted or needed. You didn't ask anything. Daniel winced and I pressed on. If I had told you that I didn't remember my early childhood, you would have shrugged. He opened his mouth, then closed it. And if I had told you I felt lost, unsure of who I was, you wouldn't have cared. His jaw tightened. That's not, you left me, I cut in sharply. For someone who made you feel alive, right? Those were your words. His girlfriend looked down, suddenly very interested in her shoes. Daniel tried to step closer to me, but Mr. Hale glared him back into place. Sit, he commanded. And Daniel, my arrogant, dismissive ex, actually sat. Mr. Hale turned back to me with a gentler expression. Ava, your parents were extraordinary people. I felt my throat tighten. I barely remembered them. I met them when I first launched my company, he continued. They were younger than most partners, but smarter, sharper. They built their wealth from nothing, and they loved you more than anything in the world. A warmth spread through my chest, something like grief but mixed with longing. They adored you, Mr. Hale repeated. You were their miracle child. I remember Ethan bringing you into the office as a toddler, refusing to leave you with a sitter because he didn't want to miss a moment with you. Tears stung my eyes. No one had ever told me that before. I had grown up believing I was unwanted, passed around, discarded. Hearing that I was once loved, deeply loved, was overwhelming. Mr. Hale continued, voice steady. When they died, their assets were placed into a trust that required a blood relative guardian to claim it on your behalf. But because none existed, the state held the records. The trust stayed untouched, waiting. My voice came out small. How much is in the trust? He took a breath. Between assets, property, and investments, approximately $13 million. The room went dead silent. Daniel's girlfriend choked on her own spit. Linda grabbed the back of a chair like she was going to faint. Robert's eyes nearly bulged out of his head. I felt nothing at first, nothing except a strange, unreal detachment. $13 million, me? It didn't feel real, Mr. Hale softened his tone. I didn't know the trust had never been claimed. I assumed you were raised by family, that everything was in good hands. When I realized the Turner's daughter had vanished from the record, I hired people to look. But the trail had gone cold. I swallowed, tears slipping down my cheek. Until tonight, he nodded. The moment I saw you, I knew. I wiped my face with shaking fingers. Why, he smiled gently. You have your mother's eyes. And your father's posture, I'd recognize that anywhere. Before I could respond, Linda stepped forward with trembling hands. Ava, sweetheart, we are so proud of you, and we always knew you were special. Stop, I said quietly. She froze. The word was soft, but it hit her harder than yelling ever could. You called me a burden, I reminded her. You made me sleep in a guest room without heating. You gave me chores from sunrise to sunset while I was grieving. You talked about me like I was nothing. Linda's face paled. Well, we didn't mean. Yes, they did, every single word. Daniel stood up abruptly. Ava, wait, look, we got off track. We were going through things, and maybe I didn't treat you the way you deserved, but we can fix this. His girlfriend shot him a look of betrayal. I stared at him with disbelief. Fix this? I repeated. Daniel, you cheated on me. You left me without a second thought. You broke my heart and didn't even look back. He winced. I made a mistake. You made a choice, I corrected quietly, and now you have to live with it. A beat passed. His girlfriend stepped forward defensively. She doesn't love you anymore, Daniel. Let it go. But Daniel wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me with something like desperation. Too late. Mr. Hale straightened his sleeves, authority radiating from him. We're done here, he said. Ava, gather your things, Linda gasped. She's leaving with you? Yes, he replied. She's coming with me. I will personally make sure she receives everything her parents intended her to have. Robert sputtered. You can't just take her? She's not your property, Mr. Hale said sharply. And frankly, the way you treated her disqualifies you from even pretending to care. He then turned to me. Ava, do you want to leave with me? I looked around the room. At the house where I'd scrubbed floors while they criticized me. At the family that demeaned me, dismissed me, used me. At the ex-husband who discarded me like yesterday's mail, and I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. Yes, I whispered. I want to leave. Linda shrieked, you're abandoning us. After everything we've done for you? I laughed bitterly. Everything you've done, you used me, you treated me like a servant. But here's the part that really stings, you never once asked if I was okay. She froze. And now you're losing your maid, I added quietly. Not your daughter. Daniel stepped closer. Ava, please, Mr. Hale stepped between us. That's enough. Daniel's voice cracked. Just give me a chance to talk. You had months to talk, I said, and you spent them with someone else. His face crumpled. Don't do this. I'm not doing anything to you, I corrected. You did it to yourself. I went upstairs to pack, not that I owned much. Most of what I had were clothes and a few sentimental items. But as I folded my things into a small suitcase, I felt something new swelling inside my chest. Not anger, not fear, not shock, freedom, pure, quiet freedom. When I came downstairs, Mr. Hale took the suitcase from me gently. As we walked to the door, Linda called out, You'll regret leaving us. You'll come crawling back? I didn't even look at her. Mr. Hale guided me outside, placing a reassuring hand on my back. His car, a sleek black sedan, waited in the driveway. Before I stepped in, I turned back toward the house one last time. Robert looked terrified. Linda looked furious. Daniel looked broken, but I felt nothing for them. No guilt, no attachment, no longing. Just a clean, final severing of every chain that had held me down. Mr. Hale opened the door for me. Let's get you out of here, he said warmly. And for the first time in a very long time, I stepped into a car that wasn't driving me deeper into misery, but toward a future I didn't even know I deserved. The moment I sat inside Mr. Hale's car, I felt the tension in my shoulders release, like I had stepped out of a suffocating room and taken my first breath of real air. The house behind me, my prison for months, grew smaller as we pulled away. I watched its windows fade into the distance, each second changing its grip on my life. Mr. Hale didn't start talking immediately. He gave me space, time to breathe, to process, to exist without someone calling my name to scrub another floor. Only after a few minutes he said quietly, You handled that with more grace than they deserved. I let out a shaky laugh. Grace wasn't the word I was feeling. He smiled. Maybe not, but it's the word they'll remember. I stared out the window for a moment, the streetlights passing in slow rhythm. Mr. Hale, I asked softly. Yes, why are you helping me? He didn't hesitate. Because your parents would have wanted someone to stand up for you, and because I failed them once, when I didn't realize you'd fallen through the cracks. I won't fail you again. My chest tightened. So you're doing this out of guilt? No, he said gently. I'm doing this out of responsibility and respect, and because you deserve so much more than what life has given you so far. A lump formed in my throat. Thank you, I whispered. He nodded. That inheritance is yours, Ava, every cent, every property, every share. It's time the world gave back what it took from you. The rest of the ride was quiet but not uncomfortable. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel lonely. It felt safe. Mr. Hale didn't take me to some cold corporate office or a hotel. He took me to a warm, beautiful guest house behind his own home, a cozy, modern space overlooking a garden. "This is yours for now," he said as he turned on the lights. "Stay as long as you need." I looked around, overwhelmed. "You don't have to do this," he shook his head firmly. "I know, that's why I am." My eyes stung with tears. I had been treated like a burden for so long, I forgot what genuine kindness felt like. He stepped back toward the door. "I'll have my legal team contact you tomorrow. Rest tonight?" As he left, I stood in the quiet room, letting the reality wash over me. I was free. For the first time in months, no one could tell me what to do, no one could yell at me, no one could make me feel small. I sat on the bed and cried, not from sadness but from relief so deep it shook me. I cried for the life I had lost, for the parents I barely remembered, for the girl who grew up believing she was unwanted. And finally, I cried for the woman I was becoming. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight flooding the room, bright, warm, alive. It felt symbolic, like the first day of the rest of my life. When Mr. Hale's legal team arrived, everything moved quickly. Too quickly to fully grasp. Documents, files, old records, photos of my parents, photos I had never seen. My mother, Caroline, smiling with her hair blowing in the wind. My father, Ethan, holding me as a baby with pure joy in his eyes. I broke down when I saw them. They weren't just names anymore, they were real. My inheritance was explained in detail: properties, investment portfolios, shares in companies my father once co-founded, a trust that had grown exponentially over time. I felt like I was listening to someone else's story. "This is yours," the attorney said. "All of it?" I nodded numbly. But deep down, something shifted. A small, fragile sense of worth began blooming inside me, something I had never felt before. 2 weeks passed quietly, peacefully. I spent time journaling, meditating, sorting through old memories, and learning about the parents I lost. It was painful but healing. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, as I sat in the garden reading through one of my mother's old letters, my phone buzzed. A number I knew all too well. "Daniel." I stared at the screen. For a moment, the trauma flickered in my chest. But then I felt nothing, no fear, no longing, no anger, just closure. I declined the call. 5 seconds later, a text popped up. "Daniel, Ava, please, I need to talk to you." Then, "Daniel, I messed up. I made the biggest mistake of my life." Then, "Daniel, she left me, and I realized I still love you." I laughed loudly, unexpectedly. It was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever read. He loved me. He didn't even like me when we were married. Another text came: "Daniel, please, just meet me once. Give me a chance." I typed back a single message. I gave you 5 years, that was your chance." Then I blocked him. My fingers didn't shake, my heart didn't race, just peace. Daniel wasn't the villain anymore, he was a closed chapter. As expected, Linda and Robert tried their luck next. The first message came from Linda. "Linda, sweetheart, we're family. Don't shut us out." I ignored it. An hour later: "Linda, we're sorry if we made you feel unappreciated. We were only trying to help." Then, "Linda, if you want to move back in, we can give you the bigger guest room." I nearly choked on my tea. A bigger prison cell is still a prison cell. Then came Robert. "Robert, Ava, we didn't know about your background. Let us make it up to you." Make it up to me? How exactly? By giving me fewer chores? I didn't respond. The final message came that evening. "Linda, fine. If you want to throw your family away, that's your choice. But don't expect us to welcome you back later." I did respond to that one. I wasn't family to you when I needed it. I won't be family now that you need me." Blocked, forever. The following weeks were full of slow healing. I took long walks, read through documents about my parents' companies, visited places they once lived, stood in spaces where they had laughed, worked, dreamed. I cried often, but they were good tears. Healing tears. Every day I regained a piece of myself I didn't know was missing. One afternoon, Mr. Hale took me to my parents' old house, now mine, nestled on a quiet hill with large oak trees shading the driveway. "This was supposed to be your home," he said softly. I walked through the rooms, touched the walls, ran my fingers along the old piano in the living room. I felt them there, their love, their hopes, their dreams for me. And for the first time, I felt whole. One crisp morning, I stood outside the house and looked out over the land my parents once cared for. Birds chirped. The sky glowed orange. The world felt gentle. This house was mine. My story was mine. My life was mine again. Mr. Hale joined me on the porch. "How do you feel?" he asked. I smiled softly. "Free, finally free," he nodded. "You deserve it." I looked at him, this man who had stepped into my life at the exact moment I needed him. "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything." "You don't owe me thanks," he replied. "Just promise me one thing." "What?" "Live a life your parents would be proud of. That's all they ever wanted for you." My eyes filled with tears again, but this time warm ones. "I will," I said quietly. "I promise." That night I sat at my new desk in my new home, my real home, and began writing. Not paperwork, not legal forms, a letter to my parents. I wrote about my life, my struggles, my heartbreak, my survival. My strength, I wrote about Mr. Hale, and the storm I escaped, and the future I was ready to build. When I finished, I folded the letter and placed it inside the old wooden box that had once belonged to my mother. As I closed it, I whispered, "I found my way back." And I had, to myself, to my truth, to a life I never imagined I could have. Today, I'm not the broken girl who lived in someone else's house. I'm not the wife who was abandoned. Not the servant who was used, not the orphan who was forgotten. I am Ava Turner, daughter of Caroline and Ethan Turner, heiress to their legacy. A woman who survived heartbreak and came out the other side stronger, braver, and freer than ever. My past doesn't define me, my pain doesn't control me. My worth isn't determined by those who failed to see it. I finally learned something powerful: when one life falls apart, another begins, and mine has just begun.